moderated is going to be completely random.
That's right, TCB.
And here's my co-commentator joining me, Cap Revenge.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cap, as you can call me Cap, and I'm going to be helping TCB, talk about the various nuances of Pikmin 2, and especially this category. Pikmin 2 is a very fun category, but it's also very complicated, so I always feel like that, some color commentary to help, show what the game is capable of is really helpful.
Absolutely. So, without any further ado, we're going to get going if everybody's ready. And off we go.
So, we are doing these in order, right, TCB?
Yes, we are.
So, I guess one thing that I would like to say is that if you ever watch a speedrun of this not in a marathon, the moderator team has determined that there's no reason why we couldn't do this in any order, so most runs on speedrun.com have you doing challenge mode, all treasures in any order. Which is, we do an order that, of course, to get the really high RNG runs out of the way early on. However, for a marathon, since it's not like we can reset anyway, we decide to do it in order and showcase it that way. So that's sort of an overview of these things. So in challenge mode, generally, for those not familiar with the category at all, there's going to be a treasure inside every enemy, and there might be some buried and laying around. But that also means that in order to collect all the treasures, TCB has to route not just finding the treasures above ground, but also to find the fastest way to multitask, killing all the enemies, and getting the treasures in there. And so that's basically the main challenge as it stands right now.
Yes, and some of the higher RNG levels are going to be more toward the end, so I'll be pointing them out as they happen so people can appreciate that there is a very high RNG variable in this category.
Yeah. I mean, it's... Explorer's Cave is sort of it's the first level introduced in challenge mode for a reason. There's only 2 sub-levels, and it's pretty straightforward. One thing is that in every sub-level, there's it will give you a certain number of sprays, the amount anywhere between a lot of sprays to no sprays. And so seeing how TCB manages these sprays is also going to be really important.
And I'm glad we got something like this out of the way early. Because there's no treasure radar on my screen, occasionally the real killer in this category will be accidentally forgetting to put a Pikmin on a treasure, and we just saw that in the sub-level 2. If that happens, unfortunately there's not a ton I can do about it. I just sort of have to run back and collect it as quickly as I can. Yeah,
I mean, really, challenge mode all treasure say is probably one of the most mentally taxing categories of Pikmin 2. I mean, at the top level, almost every category is pretty mentally taxing, but I would say that challenge mode all treasures has the highest density of treasures that you have to collect, and has the highest density of multitasking at any given time. So keeping everything straight in your head can be very difficult. So this is the second one, Novice Training. TCB can correct me if I'm wrong, but Novice Training is sort of one of the harder challenge mode all treasures categories, because in the second sub-level there are buried treasures. And of course, because you have no treasure gauge or way of telling it, you basically have to scan the ground for these buried treasures, and so that can be very difficult.
Yeah. In a traditional run, I actually put this level second in order. However, because in either way it's going to wind up as second, I decide it's fine. The buried treasures are definitely the most antagonizing part of the run, because as Kat mentioned, there is no way of particularly telling where they are. There are some repeat locations that you can look for to help yourself out, but for the most part, you do have to trust that you get some decent RNG, and that you're able to quickly understand where they are?
To those that are less familiar with Pikmin 2, purples in challenge mode can be a decent asset because purples have the carrying strength of 10, which means if you want to, make sure that you're not, that you're being efficient with your Pikmin numbers, instead of putting all your Pikmin on a treasure, you can just throw one purple and keep moving, and that's what TCB is doing. Throwing 1 or 2 purples on a lot of the treasures just to keep them moving. Purples do not carry the treasures very quickly, but they, it's a way of getting them all slowly carried together. So this kind of layout that you see this kind of system that you see right now in the novice training is very, is very indicative of what we see, where TC is doing something right when sort of all the treasures are slowly coming in at the same time. That means he didn't forget anything and he's not leaving a treasure behind, and it's very streamlined. And it can be sort of hard to see, but in order to get this sort of like clean line and clean stream of treasures, it requires a lot of attention. And with that last treasure, that was level 1. Woo!
A little early to be out of breath. However, we are now at sub-level 2. And sub-level 2, as I mentioned previously, can be a little stressful. However, I did get a tad lucky in that my Pikmin found a buried treasure relatively quickly. I devote my entire Pikmin's attention to digging up this treasure and collecting this key, because Pikmin traditionally dig very fast on spicy sprays, and I like having my Pikmin slowly carry the treasure as I find the rest of the spicy sprays. Buried treasures.
Yeah, spicy sprays double the animation of your Pikmin, so that also, doubles their attack power, because of course they hit the enemy twice as fast. But it also, and it also twice as fast, and well, they don't move twice as fast, unfortunately. But spicy sprays are very useful in that sense, where they help digging and they speed up attack and combat. Another interesting thing is that if there's leaf Pikmin in your squad, spicy Pikmin will carry at the same speed as flower Pikmin, which means, of course, that there's no difference carrying between a spicy white and a flower white, but if you have a bunch of leaves, it's an easy way to also make sure that you're carrying as fast as you possibly can. So digging is usually a slow element of this game, so that's why, as CCB said previously, he's really trying to focus on just getting the digging sorted. There's how many buried treasures this level? I believe it's 3, right?
There are 4 completely hidden buried treasure and 1 partially buried treasure. So there's 5 things that I have to dig up this entire time. I have 3 of the completely buried ones and the partially buried treasure on the move as we speak. Now, the stressful part is, where is the last treasure that I haven't found yet?
Yes,
which effectively why I do this level very early on in the category.
Yes. Well, so what TCB has done is, because they're all being carried with purples, he still has a squad of whites, so he can continue to scan and figure and try to see if he can get it. Challenge. Oh, there's the glint. Yeah. So, and then of course, the geyser needs Pikmin to work on it before you can leave. So he also put a couple Pikmin on the geyser to help speed that up. But this is the most of the RNG. I can't speak too hard for all of the RNGs, but I feel like a lot of RNG, requires like a good sense of the routing. But I feel like that buried treasure RNG is rough because, it's there's very little that you can do. You can just try to scan. It's possible that it's in the spawn, but it could be anywhere.
Unfortunately, the spawn is usually the last place checked because it is the most uncommon. However, I have a very strong feeling it's going to be in spawn.
Well, because of course we're in a marathon.
Right.
That's what happens. Oh, I see, and it wasn't respawn. Great. Classic. Well, you know.
That is okay. We are still saving time on estimate, or a little time on estimate.
That's good. I would say that, this estimate, although of course slow, significantly slower than TCB's PB, is still a really impressive estimate. I mean, this category, very few people can even really complete this category. And so, like, the fact that TCB has it consistent enough to show this in a marathon is just really impressive.
Yes, of the 5 people that have attempted and completed this marathon, you are currently listening to the only 2 that speak English. The other 3 are Japanese Pikmin 2 challenge mode score runners, so they do obviously have the upper hand against people that don't have years and years of experience of grinding Pikmin 2 challenge mode.
Yeah, or I was gonna say, in the Japanese community, challenge mode is a lot more popular than story mode. So it's common, if you look at the challenge mode speedruns on speedrun.com, that a lot of the top runners, with the exception of TCB and myself, a lot of the top runners are Japanese, and that's just because they're the culture of doing a lot of challenge mode runs is very strong. It's one of the more popular categories. So, which is but that just means that that there's not a lot of people in the English speaking community that have labbed it out as much as TCB has. So he's been a real god for a lot of that sense, and has developed a lot of really good strats.
So it looks like Lost Toy Box 1 is going along well. There's not a lot of surprises that come, especially in the earlier challenge mode levels. The real key is just making sure that you put your Pikmin sufficiently on every treasure so it's moving toward the rocket. That is really the only way you can lose significant time in early levels without buried treasures.
I mean, there's a lot of treasures here, but Lost Toy Box, they sort of go overkill and they give you 100 yellows. You don't really even need 100 yellows, frankly. But since you got them, you can use them. But that means you go pretty overkill on fight on combat, not. So the big bullborb over there will have the key. So TCB's probably going to work on that. But, you'll notice that, and this is, I feel like, an underrated element of Pikmin 2 speedrunning in general in nearly every category. What TCB is doing, which is the sign of a top player, is TCB is very good at, after, doing something, moving from one objective to the next really cleanly. Like, he's not getting hung up on enemies or treasures. He is just sort of, he loads up the Pikmin, he fights, and then he just keeps moving on to the next one. And I feel like that, when you're in the heat of the moment, focus on routing and making sure you didn't forget anything, spending too much time thinking is just a really easy, habit to fall into, thinking instead of doing. So a lot of the experience that TCB has comes in handy when, and his game knowledge of challenge mode comes in handy when just moving from the first to the next, and it's really impressive.
I appreciate that, and it seems as though Lost Toy Box 2 has given us good RNG, because most of the heavier treasures were very early on in my route.
I was going to ask, so Lost Treasure Box RNG, you consider basically just the distribution of the weights of the treasures then?
Yes.
Alright. Yeah.
Treasures that require more Pikmin to carry are traditionally slower moving, so the treasures worth 10 or 15 Pikmin showed up fairly early into the collection phase.
Right, yes.
That means the lighter treasures that move faster go toward the end of the collection, making sure that the heavier treasures get in at around the same time.
Yeah, that was a very impressive Lost Toy box. They all just sort of came in at the same time, and you know, it was very efficient. Good job. All right, Creator's Garden. This one, it's, yeah, there's, you know, you can tell some themes that go on in the first couple sub-levels. So the last one was all yellows, and this one's all blues.
Yes, there is only one challenge mode level where you wind up with all purples, and multiple others in which you wind up with homogeneous other colors. That's probably because purple Pikmin are fairly overpowered Pikmin in general. They have the ability to stun, do increased attack damage, and on top of everything, can carry treasures at a clip of 10 Pikmin instead of 1.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, you have to be. You don't really get any. You don't really get any breaks in challenge mode compared to story mode because you don't get to control. In story mode, you get to control your Pikmin distribution. You know how many of type you have. I mean, within reason. But in challenge mode, you're given, you know, you have what you're given. So it's really understanding the tools about, you know, how to maximize your time with the squad that you're given. When the Chromad shook, it created some leaves, which can be frustrating just because leaf Pikmin, those not intimately familiar with Pikmin, there are 3 types of Pikmin. There's flower Pikmin, bud Pikmin, and leaf Pikmin. And the further along the evolution of flower exists, the more the faster they move, the faster they carry. And of course, you know, since you are limited by the strength and speed of your Pikmin, so the faster your Pikmin move, the faster you can get everything done, the faster you can multitask. So trying to maintain the number of flower Pikmin in your squad is really important.
And to bring up something that I do in this particular level, as you can see, there was a very far treasure behind a black wall. In order to make sure that I did not waste time watching the wall being broken down or walking back over to collect the treasure, I left Louie by the black wall and only put roughly 15 Pikmin on the black wall so they could break it down slowly in the background while I went out and collected the rest of the treasures. And as a result, we saved about 10 seconds on my personal best.
Yes, wow. And that sort of cognizance and awareness is like something that is sort of a staple of Pikmin 2 speedrunning, because of course since the layouts and the positions of all the treasures are different, like there isn't going to be one consistent thing that you do every time. So you have to sort of recognize, you know, what treasures are going to be far and make adjustments as such. So this is Green Hole. This is a 2 sub-level hole, and so this is where Boldmen are introduced, at least in challenge mode. Boldmen are, you know, versatile creatures. They're like Pikmin, except they are immune to hazards, and so that can make them very useful in several different levels because they are tolerant to fire, water, electricity, and poison.
Now, for anybody familiar with the story mode of Pikmin 2, I'm sure you've seen a Boldman, and I'm sure you've also realized that they cannot be taken out of story mode caves. And the reason that the developers do this is exactly that reason. They are just too versatile to justify giving players in the above ground. They are too useful for above ground in general.
Yes. But of course, since challenge mode is all underground, we aren't restricted by, you know, those things. And so these eggs are giving the nectar that of course transform your Pikmin from flowers to leaves. So that's what he's doing there to, of course, increase the carrying speed of his overall squad. One other thing that I feel like is worth mentioning is there hasn't really been deaths in this sublevel, but In general, challenge mode is pretty tolerant to death. In the Pikmin franchise, you know, there has been several, you know, different games and different categories have different tolerance for death. But challenge mode, although you massacre your squad, is a little bit tolerant of the occasional death here or there, because the main importance is that you have enough Pikmin to multitask and get to your treasures. But if you lose 1 or 2 Pikmin, it usually is not the end of the world on most levels. So one advantage is sort of a level of death tolerance, and it allows you to go even faster.
Right. And especially in the earlier levels, the chances of me actually massacring and killing off my entire Pikmin squad is fairly low. However, that fear certainly does come into play, especially in the later levels. Because if you do wind up destroying your squad, yes, you could technically reset the speedrun. However, at the top level, this would effectively make sure that the speedrun could not be completed for a personal best, which is ultimately the purpose of a speedrun, is to go for a personal best.
Well said.
So, Hothouse is definitely one of the more stressful sub-level ones, mostly because of a dwarf bullbear. Dwarf bullbears are particularly hard to kill because they have advanced radar that they use to detect your Pikmin earlier than any other dwarf bullboar. This becomes especially problematic in regular gameplay when you have many Pikmin, but when you're only starting a level with 3, it can significantly harm you.
If you couldn't tell, the bullbear is the one with the black back that was chasing TCB around. It is ridiculously persistent. It eats Pikmin really quickly, and since of course you only start out with 3 Pikmin, the number of Pikmin in your squad is in this level is very precious, and it requires, you know, in Pikmin it's not hard to be cautious, but it is hard to be cautious and fast. So, you know, finding that, you know, being careful but also being quick is the name of the game.
Well, unfortunately, because he did make me move around a good deal, we will be dealing with the slower sub-level. I went quiet real fast so I could make sure I would hear the treasure complete bell, which is also important to bring up. Once I complete every treasure, or collect every treasure in the sub-level, a small, dull ringing will happen in the background of the game. The reason that this happens is the game is letting the player know that they have, in fact, collected all the treasures in that level.
So they don't keep looking.
Which is also the reason why this category is all treasures and not all collectibles in the first place. Because at a glance, you may wonder why I'm leaving all of the enemies behind. That's because that sound will play with or without the enemy bodies actually getting collected. What this means is that it would be a nightmare for the moderators of Pikmin 2 to go about figuring out if everything was truly collected.
Yes. Indeed. The Queen, in challenge mode, you'll see Queen Candy Pop Buds used a lot. Sort of a staple of Hothouse. Queen Candy Pop Buds are these flowers that you're seeing TCB use. You can put 1 Pikmin in and get 9 out, so with a net growth of 8. And later down the line, there's going to be called Breeding Ground that also uses these, but they're in the level to you know, assist TCB with upping his numbers and making tasking easier. Of course, growing Pikmin in general can take a really long time, so it's sort of a dance that you have to play between, you know, wanting to make sure that you have enough Pikmin to do stuff and not wasting time growing Pikmin you don't need. And so that's a common dance that's usually done.
Now, in Hothouse, they offer you 3 Queen Candy Buds at the beginning of the level that can turn to any 3 Pikmin type. This is because the second sublevel has electricity, water, and fire. I find electricity to be by far the most scary of the hazards, so I opt to go all for yellow Pikmin. However, without foreknowledge of what was going to happen on the second sublevel, I may be inclined to use 1 of each color for safety purposes.
Indeed. As was shown earlier, there are 4 main hazards in this game, aside from, of course, getting eaten, or boulders, or speaking of Brawny Abyss. But there's 4 main elements. There is fire, there is water, there is poison, and there's electricity. Now, the notable thing is that as you can see with the fire, that Pikmin can actually be saved from burning. If they are on fire and you whistle them, then they will be saved. They will not burn alive. However, and you can truly save Pikmin from drowning and you Pikmin from being poisoned. The unfortunate thing is you actually cannot save Pikmin from electric shocks. They are not shock-proof. So that makes it them the most dangerous. That makes electricity the most dangerous hazard because it means that if your Pikmin get shocked, then those are deaths that you cannot save.
So what I do when I do not have a significant enough amount of Pikmin to carry back every single treasure is I will use treasures that are currently being carried to add their momentum to stationary non-carried treasures. Well, effectively, I'm using a treasure to push another treasure closer to the pod to be collected. So you see in a case where I whistle my Pikmin off of a close treasure to put them on a far treasure, you are essentially as fast as your slowest moving treasure in challenge.
Hello, Bennett and Jack and chat. Thank you for joining us. In many ways, and also if you leave treasures close to the pod, Pikmin from other treasures that get collected will then go and try to assist in carrying the other treasures close to it. So that's a way to call Pikmin off sooner, and the sooner that you call Pikmin off, the sooner you can multitask and start again, and of course the faster you can beat everything. Boulders can be really scary. The decorated cannon beetles fire boulders that will home in on the nearest active captain, and so generally top runners such as TCB can position themselves in ways where the boulders don't serve a threat, but, you know, like electricity or getting eaten, you know, boulders, you can't save a Pikmin from getting squashed. Once it's squashed. You can't unsquash a Pikmin, so, those are all hazards that can be, you know, not too blood pressure inducing for the experienced runner, but, you know, hazards that we all have to keep an eye out for. Especially the ones from the decorated, because those home.
And is worth mentioning, because I will in all likelihood do this later on in the challenge, if you exit a challenge mode sublevel or story mode sublevel before the Pikmin death counter goes up, it does not matter what is killing or has technically killed your Pikmin. You can save it, and you have actually a couple of frames to save it. So even if a Pikmin gets squashed or shocked, if I'm exiting the sublevel at a very close frame, there is a possibility of me saving the Pikmin.
Yeah, there is a weird, for whatever reason, the designers of Pikmin 2 decided that it'd be a great idea to have there be an interval between a Pikmin's death animation and the counter going up. So even after you see a Pikmin dies, it actually isn't dead or registered as dead by the game until the Pikmin counter goes up. So if you go to the next level before the counter goes up, then that Pikmin is not dead. So here has aka the Scourge of Challenge Mode all levels, because there's a bunch of bulbs and they all look the same, but only one has the key. Of course, for all treasures, it's less of a big deal since you have to get all the treasures anyway. But you know, this level has you seeing double a lot. You getting a lot of enemies in a row, close together is good because the spray that is turning them to stone is called the Ultra Bitter Spray, and it not only immobilizes the enemies and makes them unable to attack, you know, it freezes them, locks them in stone, but also Pikmin, on non-boss enemies, Pikmin do double damage. And so it's a really easy way to kill large enemies you don't want to deal with. So in this case, of course, we reserve the bitter sprays for the large red Bulborg. But of course, CCB was used them Wall Break can immobilize, multiple enemies. So that was the easy way to, make sure that with the sprays he's given, he's able to maximize it.
And it does look like this is going to be a gold split. This was a very good RNG because of how small the layout was and the dense population of the large bulb orbs close to my rocket.
Yes. Another thing is that, the spawn point was in the middle, which means that all the treasures are equidistant. If you spawn on one side of the room, the treasures on the far side of the room are going to be very far. Whereas if you spawn in the middle of the room, you sort of have an even distribution of carrying distances, and so it's a little bit less scary. But yeah, that was a textbook Red Chasm. Trampled Garden is once again another stressful sublevel because there are treasures once again for TCB to worry about. And so now, is it Trampled Garden that is 3 buried?
It is Trampled Garden that has 3 buried treasures.
I knew I got 3 number you. Yeah, so while collecting, of course, the visible treasures, TCB is going to keep an eye out to see if the white Pikmin are digging its other end of the card. Now it's silly, right? But so TCB is going to be keeping an eye out for the for the buried treasures. The blowhogs there are ground blowhogs that do fire and water, but there are also aerial blowhogs. Those are ridiculously annoying because not only do they blow your Pikmin around and make you lose control, but they also your Pikmin. They turn flowers into leaves, and so of course that is very unfortunate because it will slow down carry speed if the blowhogs get their hands on you. Which in this case they have. However, as with anything, fortune can be saved by quick thinking and good routing.
So the unfortunate thing is that none of the buried treasures seem to have just presented themselves to be in my way, which is not necessarily the end of the world if I can quickly find them now. However, if I do struggle finding the buried treasures, we are obviously looking at a time loss.
Yes, the buried, if I'm mistaken, usually the buried treasure levels are some of the first ones done in challenge mode, all treasures, for this reason. Because, it's hard to route what you can't see, and it's hard to find what you aren't given a gauge for. So, so this is of course for obvious reasons another source of stress because you have to, it's hard to route what you can't see.
So far I have located one of the 3 buried treasures. Once again, this is not particularly the end of the world. We still have ample time left on the challenge mode level to finish the sub-level before the timer runs out.
Oh, yes. It never was hilariously said, but for challenge mode, naturally, there is an in-game timer. You see the time up above. Hilariously, an in-game second is actually 2 seconds. So every 2 seconds, the counter at the top that says time will go down. Of course, since that's a timer for slightly more casual play, at least, speedrunners usually do not struggle to finish a level in the time limit, which is why it wasn't brought up. But the only exception can be if the buried treasures take forever to find themselves. But having time be a factor is very rare.
Well, we are getting dangerously close into that territory. Unfortunately, as we said before, there's absolutely no possible way of figuring out where these treasures are other than areas you've already checked. And to add on top of that, white Pikmin sometimes can actually gloss over a buried treasure area without completely digging.
Yes, no, it can be very... Worst case, we have contingency plans for this, but, it can be hard. This game can be fickle and can put the buried treasure into a corner that, isn't scanned super rigorously, or they're gonna be put somewhere crazy. So sometimes there's nothing you can, and that's sort of the unfortunate fickleness of Pikmin 2. But I think that the Berry Treasure worst, most stressful levels, and outside of that, it becomes less of a guessing game and more of a routing problem.
Yeah, and like I said, there's to be honest, this level and Novice Training are the only two levels that can actually kill a speedrun. And as we just saw, Trampled Garden was in this case not very nice to me. However, because there is some natural contingency built into this speedrun, I can simply restart the level. If this were to be an actual speedrun, I would be restarting the run. However, that's also why I play this level third into my speedrun. This is one of the two levels that can just kill a speedrun. Not ideal that it's to me in a marathon of all things, because I doubt anyone really wants to watch me do this twice, but hopefully the buried treasures will behave a tad nicer and we can actually get out of here in a decent amount of time. I feel as though we jinxed it by saying what could possibly happen too many times. Not a big deal.
Yeah. Well, I blame myself. Well, this primarily is a factor, and of course, I'm being a factor. But, I think that, the main thing is just that, once these levels are out of the way, then less problematic. Then everything else becomes less problematic.
Yes, this is in fact the last level that there is a significant chance of me redoing.
Yeah.
So, I do certainly apologize to the viewers, and hopefully we smooth sailing from this point on.
Yeah.
So far, this Trampled Garden is going much better.
The main thing about this is that compared to story mode has a lot. Each level only has a couple treasures, where the treasure density in challenge mode absurdly high. So making sure understanding if you checked an area, being really rigorous is hard, because you have to be really rigorous while simultaneously not making sure that you haven't forgotten anything. And so so that's very. Those two levels are, in my experience, have been the most taxing levels for me, because aside from maybe hazard training getting Weevils to appear, but that's a conversation I will bring up closer to when it becomes relevant.
It's just another source of stress. So it looks like we're definitely going to get out of this Trampled Garden.
Oh yeah, all the berry treasures have been found, right?
Yep, either they've been completely dug up or we are in the process of digging them.
Right, of course. Well, that's great. No, and then that we have finally collected all the treasures here. Finding the buried ones are right next to treasures above the ground, so it's really easy to think you've cleared the area when you haven't.
Absolutely. So, we are definitely out of Trampled Garden and moving on into the run, and as I said before, there is no more levels where buried treasures can become that significant of a problem, so it's going to be fairly smooth sailing from here. And next we're going to enter Twilight, very similarly named to its neighboring level, Trampled Garden.
Twilight thing is that there's not really a lot of in Twilight Garden. There's mostly just some dwarf bullbears and some sheer grubs, but there is going to be a beady longlegs, which is an arachnorb spider that drops down at a random location, and we have no clue where it's going to drop down. So that's something that you got to keep an eye on. Luckily, we have the sprays to deal with the boss in a very quick manner, but the main thing is just sort of keeping our eye for that while simultaneously making sure that we don't stretch our crew too thin, collecting everything. Oh, there it is.
And in challenge mode all treasures, it does not particularly matter how close or how far the BB Longlegs appears. However, in a separate category called challenge mode all levels, where the sole purpose of the challenge is to get the key and leave the level as quickly as you can, this level can turn into an actual nightmare depending on its location. Luckily, we are dealing with a scenario where it's not nearly as stressful.
Yeah, I think TCB, you know, just sort of saying it where it's, you know, it doesn't really matter where all the things are as long as, you know, they're multitasked really well. The key, although of course being necessary to leave the level, isn't really super, you know, huge in terms of when you get it, because it's one of the lighter treasures in the game. It's a 3-weight, but it can also just be carried with 1 key if need be, so it makes acquiring it not very stressful.
And something that you will see me do is the knapsack, which is the most important level in story mode speedrunning, but one of the least significant abilities in challenge mode. What it allows me to do is have my captain be carried as if it was a treasure back to the rocket location. I can utilize this to make sure I have one captain heading in one direction that I want, while simultaneously moving the other one to a strategically favorable spot.
Yes, so the way to use it there is while moving with Louis to one end to the geyser, he was also able to bring the knapsack as captain back to the ship to collect those and to, you know, help with the geyser. So, you know, just another added level of multitasking. It's also the only story mode upgrade that's automatically. Cryptic Cavern is notably hard. It's a level where you fight increasingly difficult enemies, but with only 10 Pikmin, 5 whites and 5 red. So that, you know, so the early levels are more easy, but the later levels can be a little bit more difficult.
And in the first 3 levels of the challenge, we're going to see buried treasures. Not to worry, the levels are small enough, and aside from sub-level 1, all of the treasures are guaranteed to spawn. So, there's never going to be a scenario in which case I run out of time in this level. What I will do is use the spicy spray to make my very small amount of Pikmin dig significantly faster, because as stated, spicy spray does directly have a correlation on dig speed because all animations are increased.
Doubled. As a matter of fact. So, and the next one is a watering hog.
Yes, sir.
Which one is, one of the buried treasures actually requires all 10 of the Pikmin to carry it, right? Is that sub-level 3?
That is coming up next on sub-level 3.
Right, that's what I thought. And, while Olimar punching, cool, for whatever reason in this game, when the captains walk, or are otherwise, their punch speed doubles also. So when you punch, you'll see TCB either move in a circle or move back and forth or otherwise simulate walking while punching, because it doubles his punch rate and can increase the rate at which Olimar and Louis can kill the enemy, which is super critical.
Alright, so far the Cryptic Cavern is going well. And an interesting note, in Cryptic Cavern sub-level 3, which we'll be seeing shortly, there is an enemy that is a Dweevil that can pick up and steal treasures and also use an element to attack your Pikmin. As previously said, electricity can effectively kill every Pikmin except for yellows and Bulbmen without the possibility of rescuing your Pikmin. So, a Dweevil that shoots electricity can be naturally stressful when dealing with only white and red Pikmin. So in challenge mode all levels, in case you have to collect the key and exit the level as quickly as possible, this can be quite stressful because this sub-level has the potential to wipe out your entire squad. However, in all treasures, what we're going to be doing here is letting all 10 Pikmin on Spicy Spray dig up the buried treasure, while I use my captains to kill off the Dweevil without any fear. After that, I will use the much faster moving key to push the very slow moving and large shell closer to the rocket at an accelerated rate.
That's using treasure to push another, like a really impressive skill that isn't really utilized in story mode because the treasure density is never that high, but it's always really cool to see it happen here. And oh man, check out how much faster that is. Isn't that crazy? It's like, it just, you know, because it's being carried at the speed of the key, which is carried really, so it's so much faster. It's sort of nuts.
And just by doing that one trick over not doing that trick is a 15-second time difference, if you can believe it.
Yeah. Well, because, yeah.
Because only the key and the shell can be moving one at a time, because I need all 10 of those Pikmin to move the shell, so the key cannot move if I carry the shell regularly. However, by letting both treasures move at once, not only is the shell moving faster, but both treasures are moving.
Also, white Pikmin flowers carry twice as fast as red, white, or blue Pikmin flowers. So, ensuring that white Pikmin are carried, and as well as other treasures, is super helpful because, and super important to make note of because it, you know, it means that the treasures are going to ship twice as fast, which, you know, just stacks it up. Despite the 2 Pikmin lost on 5, this is still
Yes, because the berry treasures behaved themselves and the top 4 sub-levels were good, this less than adequate sub-level 5 is not necessarily going to affect our time estimate or our split that much altogether. What I was trying to do there was defeat the Snaggerit before it had the chance to go back into the ground, because obviously every single time it goes in and out of the ground, it's a waste of time that I can't be doing anything else. Unfortunately, I didn't execute the throw correctly, so I did lose 2 Pikmin. Not necessarily the end of the world, and is a fairly standard time loss. It's a very difficult trick to get. Now, coming up next is going to be a level called Concrete Maze. This is the level that we traditionally start all challenge mode runs with, because this level has such a high variability of RNG, that is random number generation, that it can be anywhere from 3 minutes to 6 minutes. Finding a good concrete maze is incredibly rare, and runners of these categories will often spend close to hours someday resetting. We will not be doing that today. We will be living with whatever RNG the level does happen to give.
Oh my lord.
It looks in this particular case we are not dealing with horrible RNG. However, this is way less than optimal.
I will say that sub-level 1, you know, can be really bad, but it, you know, most time isn't always the end of the world. The ones that is really bad is Concrete Maze 2, because Concrete Maze 2 can be the size of some of the story mode above ground areas, in which case, you know, you can, you know, it's just maze for, you know, many square feet in all directions where and you can't see anything, so it's really, you know, you can almost get 2. So sub-level 2 is going to be the real of time, and we'll see exactly how fun that will treat us. But if nothing else, we can all size of Concrete Maze and the fact that the developers thought something like this would be a good idea. And so that's, you know.
So this layout is actually going to be fine. It is definitely less than optimal. However, because of all of my completed challenge mode, all levels, treasures runs, I've probably reset Concrete Maze about 1,000 times, at least. I'm very good at picking up where the key is, so although it was not apparent or even in the frame of vision when we entered the level, I did know exactly where to go to find the key.
Because you're an absolute wizard.
Nope, just many game hours setting. However, it does pay off in the long term in terms of running a challenge mode category, because some RNGs that look particularly bad into decent RNG. So while this concrete maze would not make the cut for one of my challenge mode runs for personal best, I would say that it's not that far off. Sub-level 1 was not a significantly bad level, and sub-level 2, albeit the key was quite far, I read very quickly.
You know, oh yeah, sorry, go forward.
Now, where the exit pops up can actually be the more stressful part. Because if I've seen the area of concrete maze that the exit appears, everything's fine. If not, we have a whole other thing to look for, which in this case we are going to have to look elsewhere in the level, although there's not necessarily that much level left to look, so I have a pretty good idea I know which direction to head.
Yeah, but, I mean, even now, it's really easy to those less familiar why concrete maze is can be super frustrating because you have this these really large areas, carrying the key through these large areas which feature bomb rocks and bomb weevils, and then having to find the key is just can be super long and super aggravating. But TCB is right that this seems to be more than manageable, but there's a lot to be had. And luckily, first 2 floors you're sort of stuck because you just have a bunch of gates and only 2 whites to show for it. But here we of course once again get Candy Pop, and which have now increased our 2 Pikmin to 18.
Now, unfortunately, in particular smaller challenge mode levels such as Concrete Maze 3, there is such thing as a worst possible layout. And I'm glad that this is happening in a marathon, because here you see the worst possible Concrete Maze layout for Concrete Maze 3. All 3 of the treasures are an extra room, a small area with a square in between, away from the rocket, and an egg containing nectars to flower my Pikmin and increase their speed and attack output has not spawned, which means we are going to be completing a long layout with only leaf Pikmin. However, if done fast enough, can still not be a significant time loss.
Wow, yeah, the egg spawn. And yeah, since eggs, flower Pikmin carry twice as, flower reds carry twice as fast as leaf reds, so this is taking twice as long as it would in other layouts, which just shows that this one can be very RNG heavy, but I always think of it differently. I feel like that the RNG game for the most part is very in Pikmin 2 is very reactionary RNG, like it's RNG that you need to react to, but which is different than RNG like Mario Party, where you have to roll a bunch of dice. It's not necessarily dice roll decision making, it's just sort of like knowing what has changed in this layout from other layouts and how to adjust that and how to account for that. I mean, sometimes you'll get things that just invariably slow things down, like Nectar. But I find that, like, seeing how TCB and how other runs manage and mitigate both familiar and is a true testament of, like, understanding the game. Yeah, worst possible layout. You know it.
Well, I was glad that people get to see something like that. What you wind up seeing in a worst possible RNG is a lot of new runners or less experienced runners will sort of throw their hands to their sides and say, I don't particularly know what to do. And really, what being a more experienced runner allows me to do is think about the level less in terms of I can't possibly save time over a better layout, and more in terms of I'm going to try to play this layout faster than I've ever played before.
Yes. Now we have Collector's Room, which is a nice monochromatic layout, but it's monochromatic with white pick, fantastic, of course, carry quick, and so you get to see a lot of fast treasure carrying. The Pikmin series is super fun. If you've not played Pikmin 2 at all, I would say Pikmin 2. I mean, not to toot my own game's horn, but I feel like that Pikmin 2 is the most beloved of the Pikmin franchises. 1 and 3 are also great, and you know, if you haven't played those, I'd recommend checking them out as well. Pikmin 2 is one of the beloved of the franchises. It's, you know, there's so much in-game content. There's story mode, there's challenge mode, there's, you know, really good replay value. You know, lots of you know, depth. You know, both to new runners, both to new players, from new players to experienced runners. There's, you know, a lot to do. White Pikmin are sort of, you know, have so much, you know, different abilities. One thing that TCB uses is that white Pikmin are also poisonous, so that if if they get eaten, they actually will kill or seriously damage their enemies. TCB took advantage of that and used that to kill the orange Bulbor while he multitasked, because again, the deaths are less important. So that was a really great, you know, like saving time on combat by basically like avoiding the combat entirely.
And you will see me do that one more time willingly on Collector's Room if I do it. So I'll be doing it the very next sub-level, and it only takes 1 Pikmin to kill a regular Bulborb, and it takes 2 to kill an orange Bulborb or a Bulbear. And because losing 1 Pikmin is very much not the end of the world, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So,
even though there's a lot of treasures in Collector's Room, see the speed at which everything is getting carried. You know, these can go pretty quickly because you know, the white Pikmin just carry things so much faster. These are arbitrary numbers, but in terms of flowers, white Pikmin have a carry factor of 4, where of course red flowers, red, yellow, and blue flowers have a carry factor of 2, and purples have, you know, 1.6 or something. So white Pikmin, they don't really have it equal in terms of carrying. And of course, you know, we're only given whites here, so it's not like, you know, it's not difficult to make sure that they're all getting really fast carries, but it's just but you know, it's really fun to see, you know, the treasures zoom to the exit compared to other sub-levels. You compare previous Concrete Maze sub-level where you had to see a bunch of red leaves struggle with the chess piece. Collector's Room probably has the most, if I'm not mistaken, tied with, no, it has the most sub-levels in the game. 7 sub-levels. Of any
Collector's Room is, quote-unquote, the deepest sub-level in all of Pikmin 2 challenge mode, consisting of 7 sub-levels, as we're seeing. However, all 7 of them are fairly small, even the final floor of the entire sub-level, the entire challenge mode level.
And there's
so
only
they're all
one...
going to go moderately quickly.
Yeah, and there's only one enemy. One, if I remember correctly.
That is true. There is only one enemy to worry about, so it takes a little bit of the pressure off of just having white Pikmin. Complete mental thing, but I find to be the most difficult Pikmin to fight with. They do not have a particularly decreased attack value from any of the other Pikmin, but for whatever reason, I struggle a little bit with their hitbox.
It was a rumor back in the day that white Pikmin had less damage. I know that they have I know that I think that their dig speed is slower, but I don't think their damage output is different. There's, they made everything super complicated by having like carry values and dig values and damage values all sort of independent and different. So, that's how all these start. There's just all of these different variables for each Pikmin, and of course, if you're just trying to do it by eye harder than if you've taken the game's code apart, you can really definitively say yes or no. The Gatling Groink on top level 7 is ridiculously annoying, and so that's why we saved the bitter spray for that. TCB also is, although definitely killed some more Pikmin. He made sure 4 or 5 because there's a lot of really heavy treasures on the final floor. So making sure that you have enough Pikmin to actually carry them all back is super important.
So it may seem as though I killed a very arbitrary number of Pikmin. However, I was aiming to kill exactly 4 Pikmin, because each treasure here only works in a denomination of 5, except for that pickup worth 6 called the Glee Spinner. The reason why I kill 4 is because at any given time, 4 Pikmin will not make a difference in this sublevel. So I kill 4 to save time on the previous sublevels without costing my amounts of time in the final floor.
And who says math doesn't help you, speedrun, right? That's, that sort of level of precision is, super dope, honestly. And, and of course it can, it increases to, understanding how lenient that you need to be, killing just enough Pikmin that it doesn't really affect the multitasking. Yeah.
And we will see in this level I get a gold split because of very consistent, well-executed gameplay in the previous levels. Not necessarily because of the greatest RNG I've ever received, but because I only did manage to kill 4.
FFT speedrunner. Oh, you're slower. You're right. You're right. This is Weevil Nest. This is where we see the annoying properties of Weevils, where they will pick up treasures and really make them their own. And so that's really annoying. Once they have a treasure, you need, beat the crap out of them for them to, drop the treasure, and then you have to kill them because, of course, since they're enemies, they themselves have treasure. And, of course, they have a bunch of hazards, so you already know that TCB is going to have to watch the yellow one. So he dealt with the first yellow one pretty cleanly, I would say.
So it's a little bit comforting in this particular level that I'm a little overwhelmed by the possibility of getting your Pikmin. You do start the level with 25 yellow. Make things a little less stressful because you can go ahead and fight the yellow Dweevils with yellow Pikmin.
Yes, no. Certainly a good boost, but, this one, you definitely really feel some pressure. You have to, save all the treasures from the Dweevils and then kill the Dweevils themselves. And the Munge Dweevils, the purple ones, are known especially for having really high and so that can certainly be very annoying. But of course, as you saw with the purple Weevils, it's not really that. Even if you get smacked by all the, even if it gets hit by all the poison, save them. But TCP played the yellow. Man, that Munge Weevil, the purple Weevil, really is not giving up. Those ones are so annoying. The health is just ridiculously high.
And I'm not entirely sure why the developers would have chosen the poison one to be the much more difficult course, but their range of collection is actually greater than types of Dweevils. If I was them, I would have made the electric Dweevil a little bit more formidable foe, especially because of the uncurable electricity. However, that may just show that I want the particularly more dangerous level of gameplay as a top challenge mode runner than taking what I would have felt upon my first playthrough into consideration.
The fact that you want that at all scares me, but but it's there's a lot of very curious things in this game that seem sort of random, but I feel like that it's also I feel like it's though because if you want the damage to kill it, you usually probably you're gonna use reds or purples, and you wouldn't really be using whites. So I suppose it makes sense to me. But there's a lot of treasure. As the name suggests, so TCB did a good job just going from room to room and really dealing with all of those while maintaining the multitasking. That was really awesome. And
next level coming up, Cavernous Abyss, is my favorite level in this entire category to speedrun because it is one of simply layered levels, meaning that the layout itself does not change, and its treasure placement changes are so insignificant that it does not different treasure a different sub-level when the treasures are located in different spots. So it's a little bit more of a mechanical, rehearsed experience than the rest of this.
Yeah, I mean...
And what you'll see me do here is take out fire geysers only using a single red Pikmin. And the reason that I do that is because I have to fight a Raging Longlegs, which is a pretty long boss itself. So I just use one red Pikmin. When I'm done defeating the boss, all of the fire geysers will have effectively been extinguished by those red Pikmin.
If you've never seen a Raging Longlegs, it's huge. There it is.
It's sort of like a BD Longlegs, except has significantly larger feet to stomp on your Pikmin with, and has a lot more health. At this point in my challenge mode running, I feel fairly confident in taking the enemy out. However, this next part of destroying those lunge Dweevils that we were just looking at, the poison Dweevils, is going to be actually more stressful for me than the boss of this level, because Dweevils are in themselves very finicky enemies.
And of course, since they can pick up treasures and poison your squad, in Pikmin 2 speedrunning, it's sort of hilarious in the sense that the enemies that a casual person may think are hard might not necessarily be hard, but there's a bunch of enemies that casually people are like, oh, this is really a hard enemy that speedrunners absolutely abhor. Like bumbling snitch bugs, weevils, not necessarily enemies that necessarily, come off the top of like a casual Pikmin player's head as difficult enemies, but from a challenge mode perspective, they're absolutely equal from a speedrunning perspective. So yeah, one of the main people has carried a treasure and sort of taking control of that. So that's just another example about how annoying these things can be.
The Dweevil will be dealt with in more than enough time to make sure that the level is completed. They're very generous with the time in this particular level because of the Raging Longlegs, which, as we've been through, is not necessarily the biggest of deals for a speedrunner. However, could take quite a bit of time how to fight him exactly correctly. Because not only do I fight him quickly, but I don't lose Pikmin, which is essentially what they're trying to give you so much time just in case you did.
Yeah, I mean, the Raging Longlegs isn't like super scary, but it is sort of important to remember that that with those big feet, if you do mess up, it's really easy to lose like 10-15 in one fell swoop. And but yeah, I think TCB is right in a speedrun marked with variable layouts, having sort of a concrete set layout for your level is.
And now we are going to one of my, or by far and away, my least fave in this speedrun, called Snack Pit.
Oh, no.
What's so devious about Snack Pit is that what is done in the first roughly 5 seconds of the level can pretty much determine the entire split. What you're going to see me do is try to getting carried by small amounts of to lure the bread bugs back to my rocket end. This is traditionally not the easiest process out there, because bread bugs of themselves are very finicky, very strange game mechanics. So we're going to see how I do, and it looks like, unfortunately, this is not going to be a particularly great, because of my purple Pikmin had a little bit of a miscarry right there. However, it seems as though things are going well enough for the time being where I'm not worried about losing the level in general.
Yeah, with bread bugs are really annoying because you have to put enough Pikmin weight on the treasures while simultaneously, fast enough, because if it takes too long to get all of the Pikmin on the treasures, then the bread bug could steal it. And so making sure that you have, there's like that one treasure hard to grab. And so it's keeping track of all of those. That's really annoying. But because bread bugs can just, basically take all the treasures and make your life really difficult, Snack Pit is considered far and away some of the most fun levels to deal with, because just bread bugs are horrible. Another example of it does not maybe does not necessarily bring difficult to mind, but in speedrunning they're considered some of the more difficult enemies to deal with, which is something I could never imagine to myself saying 1 year ago. But how things change. Luckily, with this last bread bug coming in, the rest of the level should be straightforward. TCB did a really good sure that bread bug, the giant bread bug, was dealt with really early on, which is nice. But as you see, if a bread bug, collects treasures, you can't get them at all until after the bread bug is killed. So that dead bread bug was actually a bottleneck for all 4 of these treasures, and so that was a little bit and of course that's what TCB was saying is the number of treasures a bread bug grabs before you kill it can be a really huge bottleneck for the entire level. And so Snack Pit is supposed to be like a really nice relaxing level with no real lethal enemies, but time-wise it's just an absolute nightmare. But luckily it was sort of over, and aside from that one bread bug bottleneck, nothing too crazy happened. 3-color train isn't so hard. The main thing is that the very treasure location is well known. The main thing is there is a groin that TCB has to make sure that isn't going to assault his entire squad, because it can fire mortar shots to kill everyone. Otherwise, of course, in the 3-color training, you'll see there's yellow. There's also these anode beetles that can create these electrical arcs. And of course, as the entire viewership is now very, very, very well, electricity is, absolutely dangerous and fairly terrifying. So, luckily, purple Pikmin will pretty much automatically flip any anode beetle in its general vicinity, so it's super convenient to have at his disposal. You're given a decent amount of purple Pikmin. As well as, of course, the existence of purple Pikmin in a challenge mode level is really great, because of course you can see TCB throw the single purples onto the light 5-weight treasures, so that something can be dealt with while still having enough squad to take out the rest of the enemies and deal with poison and among other things.
So far, although there are 2 buried treasures in 3-color training, I have them both mapped out, so I know where they're going to what. The rest of this level going to prevent getting those buried treasures in as quickly as I can. There's a lot of small moving color training, on top of which is actually that Groink itself sitting up on top of the tower, because after a certain amount of time, that Groink will continue attacking my Pikmin. So not only am I racing against my challenge mode clock, I'm racing against the Groink's health bar.
Yeah, so you'll see that despite being killed, the Groink has a bar, and you see it's green now. It will only continue, and of course, once it gets all the way to the top of its greenness, it will be raised from the dead. And, you know, it'll be something else that TCB will have to deal with. But luckily, since everything seems to be really well mapped out, as TCB said, with the buried treasures, and of course, TCB used process of elimination. He saw where the eggs were, where the metites were, where everything else was, and so he's able to figure out where it is. Now, you'll see the Groink wake up. There it goes.
What I did with these Pikmin and Louis himself is I created a bunch of things around the Groink that could distract him from attacking the Pikmin carrying the treasures. So although he's back awake and that's not necessarily ideal, it's quite unavoidable in challenge mode all treasures, so it's really just best to deal with him as quickly and as quietly as you can, and having him fire at a passed out Louis without possibility of Louis taking damage does seem to be the low.
Yeah, totally. Using your captain as lures for enemies is pretty underrated. You can also use them. Maybe TCB will do it later. Weevils can pick up napping enemies as well, which can be a really good asset. Hazard training can be very finicky, because one thing that TCB is going to be looking for is there's going to be 2 Weevils in sub-level 1 fall from the sky. And finding those Weevils is really important, because of course, as with everything else, you know, you have no clue where those Weevils are. And if you can't find the Dweevils, then you can't find the treasure inside the...
So it looks like one of the Dweevils given his right early into this sub-level.
Yeah, that was really nice.
I hope that the other Dweevil follows his example.
It's the one fiery, which we already found, and then one watery, right?
Yes, sir. So effectively, there's going to be a Weevil now that's going to spawn that will shoot water once we try to attack it. Not necessarily the end of the world one way or another, because there's an entire half of the sub-level that we have yet to delve into.
Fire guys are on the treasure? No, it's TCB Redmond Line.
Yes, after doing challenge mode for a long enough time, you know exactly what you can and can't get away with, so you see me skip over a couple of hazards every now and again that may fly out for a fact that those hazards in particular cannot harm me. You know that there's no avoidable way of making that hazard be a safety. So
yeah.
You see me doing now is farming for, not necessarily farming, but trying to quickly track down the Water Age Weevil, because he major time loss if I couldn't find him. However, he does appear, so everything is good in that regards.
Yeah. No, that's, I mean, Pikmin 2 is really, it's just a test of, you know, knowing what you can ignore and knowing what you can't is, in my mind, a way of phrasing it. Because, you know, there's a lot of stuff in this game, and if you focus on the things that don't, if you focus on things that don't, and that's ultimately your time lock. So it's important to, make sure that you know what you need to deal with. And TCB was good about making sure that the farther things are getting carried first. Because, there's a thing that's sort of closer and easier to carry. And so, that's in, and TCB can max carry the last 5 weights and move on to move on to the next sub-level, pretty much. On the second sub-level, there's the Weathering Blowhog, which is annoying. There's also
there's also an orange section of dwarf orange bulborms, and ultimately once again, a fiery and watery blowhog. So the first part of this level will be dedicated to trying to find two dweevils along the border of this room. Mostly because these are sort of underchecked areas in general, but also very spacious where the dweevils often like to hide. So what I'm going to do first is make sure that my treasures can all completely come back to my rocket without being in major threat of losing Pikmin. A lot of this sub-level that I would like help carrying from additional Pikmin.
The center is important to make note of. I mean, only blues can really get into that tub. So any heavy treasure in that tub, has to be, you need to use the blue Pikmin to get to those. So that's something that TCB knows, obviously very well, and will be a large part of his multitasking. As it comes, he needs to make sure that he has enough blue Pikmin on hand in order to get the treasures in there when time comes. But he's obviously routing out all of that stuff, as necessary.
So Cap's entirely Pikmin in just a moment to go in and grab that large treasure, while I carry the two smaller treasures near where the blowhog, the orange bulborb is currently taking a tranquil nap, but will be interrupted momentarily by my Pikmin. And he will be ultimately killed for the key inside of him. So right now, as far as I'm concerned, this layout is very middle of the line. Having the far room that far away is going to be difficult on me, because usually once the dweevils are both located in, there's a dirt mound that you'll see me climb in just a little bit, or you can see on screen currently, that is kind of finicky in terms of dweevils spawning. So we're going to have to see how the game treats it and hope that everything goes well.
We did find... That's nice. Oh, so that's a blessing. What's the weight of the one? 10 weight in there. Okay, well, it could be worse, as they all say. So that's good. As long as and since the big one, in the bath was found, and now it's just sort of the slow march to make sure all the treasures are getting carried. The one thing to watch out for is, of course, the TCB had to be careful of the Withering Blowhog, because it generated some leaves that will slow down the time, but there's very little that can in the long run.
Overall, this is an excellent hazard training, and I do believe this is actually being a gold split, mostly because sub-level 1 was very opportune RNG for me. And sub-level 2 does like it was bad enough to take away the gold split.
Isn't that the second gold split this marathon?
Absolutely. The nice thing about Challenge Mode All Treasures is that even if one particular level didn't go very well, you have to keep your one level, no matter how many Pikmin you lose or how slow the treasures get carried, is not actually going to affect the next level. So although some of the challenge mode levels this run have been a little bit of a setback, namely Concrete Maze and its worst possible 3 RNG, I'm going to keep my level of gameplay as high as I can make it, because I'm still very much convinced that this run could be a personal best for me. Because currently, some of the larger, risky levels in the run, like Hazard Training and the Giant, and not the Giant's Bath, sorry, Red Chasm, have gone very well thus far. I'm also sort of projecting, because there will be a level coming up next called the Giant's Bath that is extremely stressful for me. So, hopefully that goes well. and we can see a PB this run. I'd like to see it.
Shout
For,
out to shout out to Browser. It was doing cool things to stream while you were talking. So, you know, it's all good. This one, talking. So, you know, it's all good. This one, once again, in my experience, I